Warren Littlefield is an executive producer on Fargo. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby. Wanted to kick things off, Warren, by asking you, you've worked on so many TV shows over such a long period of time. What's like what's special or different about Fargo than any other show you've worked on?
I think Fargo lives in a place of tone. I think that oftentimes you go to the movie theaters and you might see a trailer that hopes to play in that dark drama but comedy undercurrent, that Cohen magic, and it's rare that it's delivered on that experience. And I think what Noah Hawley has been able to do, and we started this journey 12 years ago, is capture the voice of the Coens. I think their ultimate compliment to Noah when they read his very first script was, "You channeled us." And I think that remains true today, even in Fargo 5, where we're playing with a story at its core of spousal abuse, right? And yet, in our own way, we're able to find the humor along with that intense drama of Fargo. That's who we are.
Mhm. Yeah. To bring us back 12 years ago to when sort of the idea for this series began, because you spoke with Noah about adapting this into sort of adapting this film into a series. Uh, but it's sort of not just a copy of the story from the film either. It's not like, so what were you wanting out of this series when you sort of were first talking about it?
Well, kind of the origin story begins all the way back in the 90s. I was still at NBC and I developed a script that was based on Fargo. And that script was kind of a straightforward network version of it, right? And I looked at it and I thought long and hard, and I said, this is an iconic film, and we're going to do a network television version of it, and that's not a good idea. So I let it go. And then a year later, CBS picked up that script, and Kathy Bates directed. Edie Falco played Marge, and it was a busted pilot. Nothing ever happened with it. I've never seen that. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but it didn't go. So a failed Fargo was never in the television universe. I think that's also really important. What I got, though, when I first developed it was, I'll lean forward, I got a snow globe, a Fargo snow globe from the that was just a piece of merchandise that they used in selling the feature. And in that snow globe, you've got the car flipped over on the side of the snowy highway, and there's blood in the snow, and Marge is standing over it. And in all the things you get when you run a network, you get a lot of good gifts over the years, right? And I always loved that one. And I kept that one close by. And then, 12 years ago ish, I was looking at that snow globe and said, maybe it's time to examine Fargo. And as we began the process with our partners at MGM and at FX, they said, look, don't think of it, as a straightforward adaptation of the movie, right? And so as Noah and I spoke to them, we were like, oh, like Fargo, A State of Mind. And they said, yeah. And then Noah said to me, so I think I get to do all original characters and all original story, and I'm still doing Fargo. And that, as an artist, was very exciting for him. And so what did we carry forward? We carried forward with us tone. And that's where we try and live, regardless of whose story we tell, what the era is, where we go. We're trying to always be true to the Fargo tone.
Mm. And 5 seasons in, 12 years later, and thinking of that fifth season, is Fargo different to what you imagined 12 years ago, or is it exactly the same?
Oh, I think every year is a surprise. I never could have imagined where Noah Hawley's mind might go. We did believe when we went into year one that we were doing an anthology, that we would join those characters, be invested in their lives, and say goodbye, right? And so that kind of says the world is your oyster. They're all tales of true crime, and we put true in quotes, um, of the Midwest, right? So we really have this tremendous range of exactly where we are and when we are in that territory. But kind of what's been true about Fargo is characters in the dead of winter in this environment are bundled, and we try and slowly unwrap them, right? And to reveal who they are, what their secrets are, and where their story is going to go.
Mm, yeah. You said like each season surprises you with Fargo. What surprised you most about season five?
I don't think we'd ever attempted to do anything quite as dark as spousal abuse. And we had this golden triangle of talent um, in um, in Juno Temple as Dot, uh, John Hamm as Roy Tillman, and then Jennifer Jason Leigh as Lorraine. And I didn't know. And we like to scare ourselves on Fargo. We like to attempt more than we're sure we can do. And we didn't know if we could continue to juggle the power, how dark that storyline could be, and still keep our humor alive. Um, we we added to the threat of, oh my God, can we do this by doing an episode with puppets?
Yeah.
And we were scared to death. And yet, for so many fans and viewers, they seem to be like, brilliant. We love the puppet episode. So we had to craft those puppets, create a puppet unit, bring in puppeteers from various parts of the world, and we just didn't know if it was going to work. And in fact, it became so much the right way to approach that sensitive material. That was the surprise. The surprise was the puppet episode worked.
Yeah, I like it. What scene, like, is there a particular scene, we've talked a bit about the puppets side of the puppets, is there a particular scene that you found particularly, I don't know, funny, or that you just think works so well?
I think we needed for Dot. Dot was our everyday mom, but with a deep secret. And we needed a wonderful antagonist. And wow, did John Hamm step into that as Roy Tillman, that far right conservative, God on his side lawman, right? But then what was the other element? What was another element to bring into that world that would introduce chaos, uh, and fear, and that was Old Munch, right? And Old Munch is a character that we're told is 500 years old, and he comes into our world um, with a dark menace, and he ends it and says goodbye to us with a smile. And so um, I think how Ham and his crew, how they reacted to that force was both dark and absolutely hilarious. And Sam Spruill, of course, one of the sweetest men on the planet, but playing a more than lethal character.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all fun for me.
I think as you've like said, it's an incredibly dark season in the themes it deals with, but there's like an incredible message of hope that comes from Fargo season 5. And I also think what's interesting is like how the show like speaks about strength. And you've got Tillman's view of strength as one particular thing, and then in that final scene of the season, we see a very different sort of picture of what strength looks like to Dot and her family. And yeah, what do you think the show says about strength this year?
I think strength, absolutely, Matt, and power. I think
Mm,
it's an examination of power.
yeah.
So John Hamm, with that, he's got a badge. Okay, so that's his power, and he has a gun, right? And he uses that power for all kinds of ways to manipulate the world and to speak about the world the way he wants it to be. And what we watch is that power unwind. Jennifer Jason Leigh, her power as Lorraine comes from money. She is wildly successful in the world of debt collection. And that's also a way for us to examine, like, how do we function in this world? Well, we're awful in terms of the debt that we accumulate and the imprisonment of that. So that's where her power comes in, and that's where her influence comes in. But ultimately, for her, that gives way to family, right?
Mm,
And so, in a way, Lorraine finds when family is threatened, her power shifts, right? And I think we really get to enjoy that. That ultimately she supports Dot. And Dot, I think, in many ways, could be considered a victim, right? And yet, the character and the spirit of Dot never allows herself to be thought of as a victim. And I think that's one of the reasons why you can watch this show, play in this territory, because Dot is fearless. Yes, she's got a secret. A lot of people have secrets, but Dot is convinced, even when she's held captive in that shed in the dead of winter by John Hamm, she looks him in the eye and says, I'm going to kill you. And we think, well, this doesn't look good for Dot, but we're never giving up on Dot. And I think that ultimately is, to go back to your word, hope. That is the hope against all odds and the spirit where ultimately the show triumphs with a little Bisquick thrown in.
yes. And I think that like something that I thought was funny while watching the show was that when Dot was on her own, I was a lot less worried than when there were people trying to help Dot. Like I was like,
Yeah, yeah. We threw so much on Juno's shoulders,
yeah.
and she just, she rose up to be a giant, right? And really, ultimately, Bill Macy's wife in the original movie is is there's a bag over her head and she's taken away and she's gone. And for Noah, it was like, let's let's take that character and find her story. Let's
Mm,
create a story for her, and that's who Dot became. But yes, great spirit, great strength, and fun, and she'll never give up.
yeah. Warren, you've like had such an incredible you have such a incredible career in television, and you've seen so much from you've worked at NBC and been head of NBC over a time when some of the greatest shows of all time were on air. Cheers, Friends, ER, like Frasier, all these sorts of things. And then now you're
Seinfeld, we'll go to
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld.
Oh, one of my favorites of all time. I've got the DVDs back here. Yeah, all
Yeah.
these incredible shows. You now work for you now head the Littlefield company. You produce shows like Fargo and The Handmaid's Tale, which you won Emmys for both of them. Uh, which is more like your prestige TV. What do you think the through line is through the shows that work so well for NBC and the shows that work so well in that sort of more prestige TV landscape?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a lesson that Grant Tinker taught us when we were kids running around the network, kind of not knowing what to do, trying to find our way. And NBC was fairly disastrous at that time in the early 80s. And Grant said, respect the audience, and you'll be paid dividends by respecting the audience. And so we kind of raised the bar. And I think for what my company has done, what I've been able to do is follow that message, right? And yes, we can do The Handmaid's Tale, and we can do Fargo, and we can do Dope Sick, we can do The Old Man. Old Man is a genre thriller piece. It's a spy thriller piece, but I think we elevate it. We start with Jeff Bridges and John Lithgow and Amy Brenneman. We elevate that genre and add a complexity to it. I think we're respecting that the audience can go there. We're not afraid of that. And so complex adult human drama that maybe wins some awards, that's kind of like where we like to live. We're playing now in a couple of places with comedy, but we'd like to not just do something that's been done before.
Mm.
You know, your biggest upside, I always found network and I think for my company is cut against the grain. You can do something that other people are not doing. Try and find that.
Mm.
So sometimes it takes longer to put it together and get it going, but it's exciting. And right now we're prepping the final season of The Handmaid's Tale. And then we'll go off to Europe and do the Amanda Knox story. And that's exciting to me.
Yeah. And we're an awards website at Gold Derby. We love the Emmy Awards and the history of them. And we're seeing changes in the types of shows the Emmys have recognized, but there is a through line in sort of if Cheers hadn't won that Emmy for the first season or two, it that sort of helped keep it attention when it wasn't the successful show it's looked back on as now. And also, like with the Emmys, they can shine a light on sort of smaller premium content that might otherwise not have viewers or the interest. So, um, how important do you think the Emmys are in television and shining a light on the best of what's being done?
More important than ever before. I'll also go back in time to a little show that we had that was sitting on Saturday night called Hill Street Blues.
Oh yeah.
And no one was watching that. But the Emmys were on CBS after our first season. And so on that night in September, Hill Street Blues cleaned up. Every other award was for Hill Street Blues. And so it was this massive commercial for that content on another network. And we moved it to Thursday night. It went on and they never looked back. And they were a top 10 award winning, ongoing great history. So that was then. And I think that the Emmys were important for saying to people, you need to take the time to see this. Now, in a world where there's infinite choices across more platforms, our lives are more complex, we work longer hours, everything, it's really competing for your entertainment time. So that award is a good housekeeping seal of approval. It says, you know what? You should take your time, find this, you'll be rewarded. And I think it means everything. So we love that love and we enjoy that attention. And it's more important than it's ever been in the history of this medium.
Looking back on your time on NBC, is there just a moment or decision you're most proud of?
Uh, 94, our development that year was two shows we put on Thursday night. Friends went on and became the anchor Thursday nights at 8 o'clock, and it went for a decade. And ER that took over for another brilliant Stephen Bochco creation, LA Law. But ER went in to that Thursday, coveted Thursday at 10 o'clock time period, and for 15 years was in the top 10. And that was the development of 94. And that was a pretty good 1-2 punch.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. And just to quickly finish off, Warren, Fargo season 5. What do you think is most special about that season?
I think Fargo season 5, we live up to the expect the unexpected. I think that we have said to the audience, you don't know what's coming. You don't know where we're going to go or what we're going to do. And I think we really live up to that. We have an amazing ensemble cast who absolutely delivers. And I think the story of what really is the mystery of Dot's path, um, um, and and from old Munch and and what Roy Tillman brings to it. I just think we leave the audience leaning in, wondering what will be next, and I think we deliver on that. And I think what's next is a journey with those characters that is both entertaining and heartfelt. And I think people walk away feeling, "Wow, I'm glad I had time with these characters." I know I felt that way.
Yeah, and I think that's something through line through from Cheers to Seinfeld and Friends and all that sort of stuff. That's how you feel at the end of a good show. Warren,
Yeah.
I hope what's next for Fargo is another season. We can't wait to see it back. But until then, all the best of luck with the Emmy Awards for Fargo season 5. Thank you so much for spending time talking with us today. And people watching this can go to goldderby.com to follow the Emmy races and watch other interviews. Warren, it's been such a pleasure. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Matt. I love your enthusiasm and it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
No worries. No, thanks so much for your time because I know you're busy and also thanks for everything you've
It's
done for all these great shows over the years.
it's my pleasure, and I'll sign off by saying cheers.
Cheers.